Good afternoon. So Todd, I just looked at the agenda, and how'd you leapfrog me? I thought it was tradition to have the Lake St. Clair talk as the last talk of the meeting, so that one snuck by me. So thanks for the opportunity. Today I'm going to be giving you an update on a new document that is now available. It's on the Great Lakes Fish Commission website. This is the Lake Erie Grass Carp Adaptive Response Strategy, and this is a product of the Lake Erie Committee. So first I'm going to give you a quick background on the population status and some of the control efforts that are ongoing, but the primary focus is to talk specifically about this strategy. This is the first document that we've got that's an interagency document to address grass carp. So the issue, we have grass carp in Lake Erie, and we know that there's some reproduction going on as well. So the issue that we're trying to address is to keep grass carp numbers at low enough levels that it's not having a negative impact on aquatic habitat. And we think that if we have a coordinated interagency effort, that we can make an effort at reducing numbers and keeping them below that threshold. So just again, just give you a quick background on status of grass carp in Lake Erie. So we first started getting reports in the 1980s, and we would get grass carp reports very sporadically, but then they started getting more consistent, and we started paying attention to those reports and starting to document them, and they started becoming more consistent. So recently, from about 2015, we started looking at the ploidy on those fish, and most of them were coming back as diploid, which was a concern. You know, grass carp had been in the system. Some of the agencies do allow grass carp stocking, but they're triploid fish. So just the assumption, there was an occasional grass carp that was caught. You know, the assumption was it was a triploid fish that escaped somehow. However, when we started looking at it, a high proportion of those fish were diploid, and it was a concern because that means that there's the potential to have reproduction out there. Diploid grass carp are not allowed by any of the Lake Erie agencies. New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania do allow triploid stocking, primarily for vegetation control, and that's under a permit system, and that's outside of the Lake Erie waters. So again, we started seeing localized populations and localized reproduction. I'll talk about it in a minute, but the Sandusky River, and more recently in the Maumee River, we've got confirmation of grass carp reproduction, so that's a concern. But we feel at the current levels, they are still below the threshold where we're seeing adverse impacts on habitat. So there's a lot of work being done recently on grass carp. Like I said, once it kind of got on our radar, we kind of started putting the full court press on it. This first one, we talked about the grass carp rodeos. Those are our coordinated response efforts. We kind of dubbed them rodeos. So we started in Monroe in 2014, and then we did one in Ohio in 2017. And both of those were under the mutual aid agreement. So we got assistance from all of the agencies and all of our partners from around the Great Lakes. So that was good. And then that was continued again in Ohio last year on. We didn't do a mutual aid request for that, but it was, again, a joint agency effort. The partnership with the commercial fishers has been really important. That's where we're consistently getting a lot of our fish. You know, they're out there using different types of gear in different times of the year, and we've already got a few grass carp that were turned in this year from one of the Ohio commercial fishers. Tagging project. So this is, if you were here for the common session yesterday, Dr. Travis Brendan gave a really nice presentation on the GLaDOS, the acoustic tagging project, looking at grass carp, and that's been really essential as far as trying to fine-tune our response efforts, to kind of focus our efforts both from a timing standpoint and a location standpoint so that we can be as effective as we can in removal. We're continuing to look at ploidy assessments, so when we're collecting fish, looking at the ploidy status. As I mentioned, we do unfortunately have reproduction going on in the Sandusky and Maumee rivers, and there's efforts going on there as well. And it's important to note that we're looking at multiple life stages. So in the rivers themselves, we're looking at egg sample collections, we're looking at larval collections, we're looking at adult collections. So we're trying to get a good overall picture of what's happening. And then finally, ongoing monitoring. Like I said, there's a number of ongoing projects. And then finally, the structured decision-making exercise, and that's been really beneficial. That was with the Quantitative Fisheries Center at Michigan State University, and that's been really helpful to identify the issues we want to address, and also we use that exercise to find out what some of the key uncertainties were, to try to focus our efforts to address those knowledge gaps. And we've continued that effort and had annual updates as part of that whole work group, which has been really beneficial as far as coordinating everybody's efforts. So now we're getting into the actual grass carp adaptive response strategy. And this is, again, it's an important document because it shows that all of the agencies are pulling in the same direction and have a common goal. So the purpose is to guide interagency efforts of the Lake Erie Committee and its partner agencies to attain the following goal, which is to prevent grass carp from attaining densities that adversely affect Lake Erie. And you can, the approach using a science-based adaptive management to guide effective decision-making by fisheries agencies. So a lot of the things I just talked about, the structured decision-making workshop, there's already a lot of ongoing coordination among the agencies and the partners. So this has been really a good work in progress, and this strategy formalizes that. So the key principles is that, again, prevent population establishment to the extent possible. It's important that our responses are going to be place-based actions for cumulative benefits. A lot of our actions are at the local level to try to have a local impact. Agencies determine response actions in their waters, and again, through instruments like the mutual aid agreement, it's been really effective as far as increasing the response and increasing the partnership that we have going towards that. It's important that agencies that have ongoing triploid grass carp programs, it was identified important that they continue those programs. So that's an important part of it. And this first document was titled from 2019 to 2023. So but it is a living document, and it will be updated regularly as needed. So what all this strategy boils down to is we've got 3 objectives. Number 1 is to improve our understanding of grass carp populations and their impacts. And again, I touched on it earlier with a lot of the ongoing efforts. The GLaDOS project, there's egg sampling, there's egg modeling on how those eggs will distribute in the river. There's a lot of ongoing work right now. The second point is to implement control to prevent expansion. And finally, we want to minimize the likelihood of introductions of new breeding populations. So the key management considerations, we're looking at sources and pathways of additional introductions, accuracy and abundance estimates, and that's important. One of the key uncertainties that we've been trying to address is how efficient our sampling gear is. And that will help us fine-tune and better address what the population estimates are. Collection efficiency and effectiveness of removals, again, that kind of goes hand in hand. Looking at the socioeconomic factors and trade-offs and limitations that there might be for addressing this. And then learning from our efforts in improving the structured decision-making process. So, and before I close, I would like to point out, as I I said, this is a Lake Erie Committee document, but Roger Knight from the commission was instrumental in helping us through this process. So I'd be remiss if I didn't help identify Roger as helping us through this process. So that was much appreciated. So with that, I'd be happy to take questions if there's time.